You have been an event organizer, so you know the score.
I do. I do.
So I was just telling a few words about you in Turkish, and I said that you were you were a co-founder of Wired magazine and also founder of Web 2.0 conferences, and I told about federated media, and I said there are more things he's doing and he has been doing because
Yes.
you have been in this industry for the last nearly 30 years.
Almost 30 years.
Wow.
Which is kind of crazy. Yeah.
Let's start from the beginning and just let the conversation
Sure.
start. Like,
Yeah.
what have you been doing? What has changed since then? You've seen all different ages of this industry, and can you please just tell us?
Well, okay, let's. We really start at the beginning. I was at UC Berkeley, which is when I was in college, and I was 18 years old. It was 1984. So I've now told you how old I am.
Yeah, we are all trying to calculate it now.
Yeah, I'm turning 25 next.
Yeah, this is exactly what I found.
Anyways, I was at Berkeley. I was in my sophomore year, my second year of school. I was working on an IBM PC. I was one of maybe 2 or 3 of my friends who worked on a computer. I was doing DBase 3 programming for anyone who...
Yeah, I heard about it.
Yeah, you've heard about it. You've read about it in history books. Yes. I was working freelance for a company doing database programming. I am not a programmer, but it was easy enough to learn the scripting language. And it was terrible. Stefan was talking earlier about user interfaces. So user interfaces for the IBM PC before graphical user interfaces on computers of today were command line affairs, very much like scripting HTML, but harder, worse, and more boring. I was doing this when a friend said, "Hey, John, come over here." And I went into his room, and he had a Macintosh, 1984. And it was the original Macintosh machine. He was one of the first people to buy one. And I sat down in front of that machine, and I, like, my head exploded. And I was, at the time, I was studying anthropology at Berkeley, social anthropology, cultural anthropology. And I said to myself, this is the greatest tool ever created by man. This is the greatest artifact. I was studying, the cultural, the artifacts of culture. So this is the greatest artifact we've ever created in the history of ever. Now remember, I was 18 years old. I was in California at UC Berkeley, and there may or may not have been some illegal substances involved in my awareness of this amazing machine. However, my mind sufficiently blown, I decided from that day forward that I would be involved in some way with this machine and with the story of that machine as it made its way into culture. I was convinced that this computer would change everything about the world, because it was the first time that I saw myself able to directly change something in the digital realm on the other side of the screen. And it blew my mind. And I said, when everyone in the world is doing that, the world will be unrecognizable from today. So my career has been following that story as it has unfolded over now 3 decades. Each time we shift into a new place in that story, I've either started a company, started a conference series, written a book, or in a couple of cases done all 3 of those at the same time, because the story is shifting to a new place. So my first job out of school was I was a reporter covering Apple. So yeah, and I started writing about Apple and the Macintosh, and then I realized no one was reading what I was writing because it was for a very narrow trade magazine, business to business enterprise trade magazine. No one understood what I was writing. My mother would read my clips. This is when it was print. It wasn't even online. That was 1986, 87. And I'd send her proudly my cover stories that I wrote for this magazine, and she'd be like, "I don't have no idea what you're talking about." And so it was that realization that led me to co-founding Wired, because I thought we need to tell this story for a broader audience so that they can understand how significant these changes are going to be in society. Mm-hmm. And we took as our mission at Wired to sort of live in the future a little bit, report on it, and tell stories back here in the present. And that was a lot of fun. But again, Wired started in 1992, and our first issue, January of 93, and there was no web, no World Wide Web. And it wasn't until the second issue of Wired that we even mentioned the World Wide Web, a little project in CERN in Switzerland. But in 1994, we started Hotwired, which was the first large commercial World Wide Web publishing endeavor. And we invented the banner ad. So you're welcome. The banner ad was our way of trying to make money from the internet. And we have a lot of them now. There's a lot of banner ads, but we literally made that up because we didn't know how to pay our writers. Yeah.
And wow, I was listening,
I feel like we just went back into history.
Everybody's so silent now, and I was just listening, and I was just thinking about, you were telling us the years. I'm just trying to match those years with some important years in the history. So you told us about those banner ads and Wire, founding the Wire magazine and everything, and then those years were the ones we called Web 1, just 1.0.
Yeah, Web 1.0, and so I was at Wired for 5 years. We did a lot of crazy things.
Yeah.
I lived in London. We launched in London, in the UK, and then in Europe, in Japan. We tried to do a television show. We tried to do books.
You've been all around media, actually.
Yeah,
media,
television,
advertising,
books, advertising, all that. But in 1997, I got an idea. Something really big was happening in 1997. The World Wide Web was 3 years old.
Yeah.
Really 2 years old commercially. And the dot-com boom, Web 1.0, was just starting to take off in 1997. And I saw the energy, and I saw all these people coming into the Silicon Valley to start companies. They were leaving Harvard Business School. They were leaving their homes in Europe and their homes in Nebraska. Ev Williams, Ev Williams, one of the founders of Twitter and now Medium, was reading Wired in Nebraska, and his mind was blown, and he decided to move to the Silicon Valley, and he started Blogger and then Twitter.
Yeah.
So this was all happening. People were coming into the Bay Area to start companies, and this boom was happening, and the venture capitalists were throwing money at every idea, and you had companies with no revenue going public. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally going public. And being worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, with no business model to speak of. All of it just society betting on the come, that this was going to be huge, and I want to buy a ticket to this future. And the only tickets that they had were stock in companies that hadn't really done anything yet. Remember, the internet in sort of version 1 of the internet in the mid to late 1990s, there were only about 100 million people on the internet, on the web, on the World Wide Web, and it was growing very rapidly. But the bandwidth was about 1/10 of what it is now. So you would wait, you click on a web link, and then you'd sort of check your watch and drum and wait for it to load really slowly, and then you'd click again, and then you'd wait for it to load really slowly. And these huge businesses were being built on this, but there was no brand that reported on all of this and made sense of it and said, is this financially sound? Is this a good idea? Let's bring sort of the economist's point of view to this story of the internet, the 1.0, and that's when I started the industry standard, which became the fastest growing publication with the most advertising pages in the history of publishing in 3 years. And then in year 4, it blew up and went away. and then I became the story in the Wall Street Journal you don't ever want to be, which is, you know, the poster child of the dot-com bust when it all was over in 2000, 2001, which was not a lot of fun. On the other hand, I learned a lot from that, and I applied that to the future businesses, particularly when Tim O'Reilly and I decided to do Web 2.0. And we realized that, wow, all those businesses from the late 1990s that were so huge and seemed like they were going to change the world, and then they all went away, right? What didn't stop were the number of people getting on the internet and the bandwidth that people had access to, the processing power that people had access to. That all increased the storage that people had access to. All of that continued along the path of Moore's Law. So while the world seemed like over in 2001, were any of you working in the industry in 2001 about 14 or 15 years ago? 2001? No?
No.
Wow.
Are you that young?
Oh my God,
really?
none of you were working in the industry in 2001. There's one of you over there. Hi. You and me, bro. Okay. And God, I'm not even going to ask about 1986 because you weren't born, is my guess. So in 2001, the bandwidth, now we reached a very key tipping point. In the United States, more than a third of people were on broadband connections. And all of a sudden, those crazy business models from Web 1.0 became possible because there was fast enough connection, enough people on the internet, people were comfortable with it, and so we had a second boom, Web 2, which is why we named it Web 2. A second boom that occurred, and these business models stuck. And the core driver, I think, of value creation in the second part of the internet, the web, was search, was particularly Google, became this ecosystem of links and connectivity and value and insight. And so I wrote a book about that. That was the book I wrote about Google called The Search. And then I started a business about social media, which was the next thing, which was Federated.
Federated Media was like the company which was disrupting the digital advertising environments, I remember.
Yeah, the insights that we had at Federated were that with the rise of a true web, the web we all know and love now, the approach to media was going to shift dramatically from one to many, which is a traditional media model of television and publishing, to many, where the individual who had a voice and something to say could, like you have with Webrazzi, start a business, you know, sort of without having to raise millions and tens of millions of dollars, and that the audience would engage on a platform where they would be more in, you know, in a many-to-many conversation. And the place where this was really happening initially was blogs. And so Federated took all of the best of those sites, and we said, you do your content, you make your connection with your audience, we'll take care of the back-end hard stuff, the business, the publishing, the ad code, the ad serving, the selling of the marketing and all of that. And we grew that to be one of the largest properties on the internet from 2005 to about 2010.
Yeah, and I'm gonna fast forward a little bit because like There are so many things to talk about with you, but we have limited time.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna quickly fast forward and come to. I want to ask a couple of questions. First of all, you founded NewCo.
NewCo. Yes.
Well, it's just 1 year old
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And we did NewCo Istanbul 2 days ago.
2 days ago, yeah.
And why are you doing this now? I mean,
Why NewCo now?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
why is NewCo so important for you? Because
Yeah.
I can see that it's really important for you.
It is.
You traveled to Istanbul 2 times just for this.
Yes.
And you expanded to. I mean, you tell. I'm not gonna.
Yeah. So I think we are at another moment, a really important moment in this ongoing narrative that started with me in a dorm room in Berkeley in 1984. I think that moment 30 years ago where I was like, oh my God, this is going to change everything. We are right now at the moment where this is true. It's no longer this idea that's going to live in the future. It's happening right now. And the way you can see it happening, the proof that you can see it, is it's not about the Silicon Valley anymore. It's not about one mythical place where all these unicorns get built and all the network, and if you want to do anything, you've got to go to the Valley, or at least you have to go to New York, or maybe London, or maybe Los Angeles. It's happening around the world. New kinds of companies are being built by people who are smart and connected and understand technology, sure, but more importantly, understand that there is an imperative, an urgency, a need to rethink the kind of society we live in. We need to invent a better society, a better culture, because we are woken up to the fact that the world is deeply interconnected. And if we don't get better at making organizations that can work with each other, we aren't long for this world. We just aren't. And all of you who have been born in the last 30 or 40 years know this natively in your gut, right? You know that the world is connected, that we're all connected through these little devices, that we all lean into them all day long, and that we need to understand how to live together better than we currently are. And to me, the organization, going back to anthropology, the structure we create in society that is the most nimble, the most iterative, the most capable of those connections and making a better society is the company. So we want to make better companies that work in a more open way and a more connected way. And NewCo is identifying those companies in every city around the world and celebrating them and saying, these are the kinds of companies that we need more of these. More like this, please. Less like the way Volkswagen works, right? Less like the way traditional government works. Less like the way traditional religion works. Those institutions are very important in our society, and we need to, of course, honor them and work with them. But more like the way Google works, more like the way Tesla works, more like the way Webrazzi works. Open, willing to try things, willing to connect and partner with people. Understand that technology is not a vertical like transportation, energy, healthcare, retail, technology. No, technology is a horizontal across everything, that everyone can start companies leveraging that to change the economy and change our society for the better. So to me, NewCo is a mission to identify, celebrate, and connect these companies around the world, because you can't start companies only in Silicon Valley. This has to happen everywhere. Our economies need to change, and the agent of that change are the people starting these companies and these companies themselves. So NewCo is a brand to drive and accelerate that idea into the world.
So we are actually normally out of time, but
we're out of time.
I don't
I've
care.
been talking the whole time.
I'm going to ask you a quick question, because before this session, we were talking outside, and it was just a normal daily talk, but that was a great topic. So let's move that to the stage now.
Sure.
Startup ecosystem in Silicon Valley. There are really high valuations at the moment, and again, like you've been in this industry for 30 years, and you've seen what has been happening over there. So quickly, can you please just give us your opinion about these high valuations, this new venture capital scene, and like I don't know, maybe business models?
Once again, just like in the late 1990s, we have an incredible sense of possibility and a potential that this is going to change everything, and I want to buy a ticket to the company that's going to be responsible for that change. I want to invest in Uber. I want to invest in the next Uber or the next Airbnb or the next Twitter or the next Dropbox. But what's happening right now in Silicon Valley is that all of those companies are going through a very important reconsideration. I think people have realized that we have bid those valuations so high that maybe we need a little time. It's like we ate a huge meal and we're really full. We need to digest for a while. I think we all believe that this story is true, that these changes are going to come. But the fact is, not every company actually wins in the market where it is winning to begin with. And I think that the Valley is going through one of its typical cycles where it realizes it overindulged and needs to pull back. And I think it's healthy. The truth is that now we have billions of people connected on the internet, and we have amazing technologies in terms of connectivity and cloud that are going to allow for the dreams of 30 years ago to be the reality of today. But to my mind, they can't be concentrated in 20 unicorns in the Silicon Valley. They have to happen around the world, locally. That's where it happens. And so we'll see. But I think the Valley needs to become more global, and that's what I hope we can do with NewCo.
It was a great talk. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And definitely we're going to see you soon again, because like now we have a NewCo Istanbul, and it's going to be continuing.
And Barcelona next week, and Los Angeles the week after that, and Boulder, Colorado the week after that.
So definitely next year we'll see you again, if you can make it next year.
Yeah.
But like we'll keep doing NewCo Istanbul. So definitely
right on.
We'll see you soon.
I love this city. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
All right.
Great. Thanks.